Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Raj Gopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm of course Sri, a co-founder and co-host of the CPG Guys and co-founder and partner of Think Blue, your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter Ria Raj's music at www.riaraj.com. That's Rhearaj, and my younger daughter Lara Raj as a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group band Cat's Eye with a K. While my wife Kavita Raj has her own podcast, Lights, Camera, Convo on iHeartRadio and all streaming platforms in June, all four of us will have our very own broadcasting mechanism, perhaps podcast. Joining me today is none other than my best friend, Peter V.S. Bond, and when he's not co-hosting, he serves as Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel, division of Omnicom that helps enterprise brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce businesses. But big question for you, Peter, is it summer yet in the Northeast?
It is. The flowers are blooming. The bats are swinging. Baseball is in full swing. I know you and I are excited about getting together for some games in short order. But my biggest question is, how long before one of the Raj family just kicks me out of this last seat and completely takes over this media empire that you guys are creating out of Woodland Hills, California?
We'll, of course, be at the Derby as well as the All-Star game, so I'm looking forward to that. New venue down in Texas, so it should be exciting. So before we get to our guests, we want to ask you to help spread the word about this community we've created in the CPG Guys by beyond sharing our podcast with your friends. If you're using Apple Podcasts or Spotify as your preferred listening platform, leave us a rating as it helps feed the algorithm that makes us more findable by CPG retail people like you looking for education and, of course, entertainment. Some days, Peter and I say, this is a baseball podcast that also talks CPG and retail. Nah, just kidding. We're happy that the CPG Guys is part of an impressive collective of highly rated podcasts, including CPG Scoop with Risa and Jennifer, and the FMCG Guys with Daniel, Efrain, and Christine. Finally, we're incredibly proud of our allyship with Next Up, whose mission is to advance the cause of women in business, to promote gender equality in the workplace. Next Up is terrific educational networking resources available to its members. I serve on the board of directors leading the development committee of Next Up. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, and a landing page on Next Up, and the social media profiles of my daughters Ria and Laura, my wife's podcast, may be found in the digital liner notes of this episode. And now, on to the main events. Today's CPG landscape has, of course, accelerated a decade plus in the last 4 years since the beginning of the pandemic. As far as omnichannel retail is concerned, a whole maturity with the digital shopper, how to build a new path to purchase is emerging in the CPG industry. Along with this, tech advances in supply chain, home delivery, how a retailer perceives a shopper and delivers convenience, all matters. Words like AI, retail media have become a buzzword, have become a home, pretty much a word that we use every single day at home in the CPG industry. So who do we have today to get into this transformation? Who survives? Who doesn't? Why some retailers actually cannot get out of their own way, and I know quite a few of them. And their categories that are doomed is none other than second-time guest on the show, Brittain Ladd. By the way, he has the following brands on his resume: Kroger, Amazon, Deloitte, Capgemini, Dell, and Michaels, and most importantly, the U.S. Army. For those who don't know, he posts often on LinkedIn, and I thoroughly enjoy his reading. So does Peter. Many of his predictions have actually come true. Watch out, y'all. So I wonder what will emerge today that we can say was heard her first on the CPG Guys. Brittain, pleasure to have you back. Looking forward to an awesome conversation. How are you?
I'm glad. It's great to be back, but I must make one correction. So I did not serve in the Army. I served in the Marine Corps. So we will absolutely have to strike any mention of me being in the Army.
There we go. Marine Corps. We got that. So thank you for joining us today. Of course, I'm incredibly excited to speak with you today about the space of CPG retail and all the supply chain advances, winners, losers in today's inflation challenge times. Brittain, before we get to the detailed questions that I prepared for you today, it'll be great if you gave us a brief overview of your work as an independent consultant today.
So I primarily worked with companies on the topics of supply chain, logistics, strategy, AI, and technology. I have multiple companies that I support. On a weekly basis, companies contact me almost, and they ask me lots of questions on robotics, lots of questions on strategy. And it's just something that keeps me extremely busy, but I really enjoy it. And I will always take my time out though, so I can be on a show like this. So I'm happy to be here.
We love that you made time for us and did take that time out. Thank you for that summary. In the digital lineups of this episode, we'll place links to your LinkedIn profile. That way, people listening in can connect directly back with you straight from their smartphones should they choose to want to engage with you. So here we go. So we just clarified you were in the Marine Corps. That's where your career began, where you actually served as a tank commander before re-enlisting into the infantry and ending as a scout sniper with STA 2-8. You then earned a BA degree and eventually three master's degrees, not one, not two, but three. That took you to Deloitte, Capgemini, Amazon, Dell, Michaels, and Kroger. Legendary resume. You say leadership is what determines the ability of a company to succeed. Peter and I would love to hear, and so would our audience. What constitutes leadership in your mind?
You know, in all honesty, the thing to me that constitutes leadership really is courage. And what I mean by that is you have to have the courage to want to lead. You have to have the courage to say, regardless of what I'm confronted with, I'm going to find a way to make this successful. That's not only the CEO, the executives, but also the associates, the managers, and so forth. So when I served in the Marines, I was in a tank. I became a tank commander. I went to the infantry. I could always shoot very well because of what I did as a kid, hunting and so forth. Then I was a scout sniper with 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, stay as surveillance target and acquisition platoon. And so I learned from some of the best leaders in the military at that time about what do you really have to focus on? What is really success in leadership? And it's being able to complete the mission. And so when we look at some of the things that I write about, I wrote a post today, for example, about Under Armour. And CEO Kevin Plank, he's saying, look, I'm going to have a restructuring. I'm really going to need to make a lot of changes. We've had too many CEOs. We've had too much turnover. But what he's not stepping up and saying is a lot of that was because of him. He was the one who chose the last CEO, Stephanie Lenartz, someone who had no retail experience, no apparel experience, no shoe experience, no sports experience. And he chose her to be a CEO at a time when he needed the best of the best. And he didn't get that. So now he's stepped in, and what he's been doing is frankly complaining about how things didn't work out. Well, he was still in charge. Although he had hired a new CEO, he is responsible for that company's success because of his position as board chairman. So I'm amazed when I see companies have these issues like Under Armour. I'm sure we'll talk about some other companies later, but the main thing always comes down to having that courage to lead and really having the courage to say, this is the mission, this is what we have to do, and this is what it's going to take to achieve it, and making sure that it's actually done. And so that's one of the topics I enjoy writing the most about, is pointing out the leaders I think are doing a great job, but calling out the CEOs that I think are doing a terrible job. And I really think Kevin Plank needs to do a much better job.
Everything I read that you write, Brittain, is absolutely courageous. So you're certainly demonstrating that. Do you believe today's retail environment is demonstrating courage? They certainly did over the pandemic, where they organized pretty quickly to have staff in store so that restocking could happen. But are they making the right decisions and they're showing courage today to evolve towards a shopper who's completely changed?
No. Well, some of them have. So let's be honest. I think some of them have. I certainly am always looking at Walmart. I'm always looking at Amazon. I think Walmart and Amazon are working very hard to make the necessary changes. But when we take a look at what's happening with Shein, what's happening with TikTok, what's happening with Temu, and we see these companies come from nowhere out of China and have a tremendous impact on retail. And I look at that and I say, why is it that the CPG companies aren't saying at any time, Temu can become a CPG company, Shein can pivot and become a CPG company? Someone on TikTok who's already been out, who's been able to be successful and introducing new brands, can take a look at the CPG industry and say, we're going to actually disintermediate this industry. We're going to disrupt it. So I think that there's a lot of need for companies and retail to step up and say, are we understanding what we're faced with? And when I see these influencers be able to sell thousands of units of product just by putting a little ad on TikTok, and be able to then turn around a few weeks later and come up with some other product and sell it just as fast. That fast fashion, that fast retail, I don't think enough retailers are understanding just how dynamic that is. And the thing that I keep saying to companies that reach out to me is, don't look at someone like Shein and say, well, they're fast fashion, they can't really do anything to us. Shein can pivot and go into any category that they want. And I believe that's exactly what we're going to see out of Temu and Shein, is that they're going to go into electronics and furniture and home furnishings and shoes, many other categories. And they're going to do so in a way that's so unique and different that slowly but surely they're going to take market share from some of these major players. And so the companies like TJ Maxx, for example, I love them. I think they're doing a great job. But if I'm Shein, they're absolutely who I'm going after, because I'm going to be coming out with apparel that I can sell that's the same quality but a cheaper price. I'm going after Macy's. I'm going to be going after many, many companies out there and saying, this is a category I'm going to enter, but I'm going to do it with a new model. And I think these retailers have to get in front of this. Most people a year or two, when I started writing about Shein and Temu, they're like, why would you write about them? They're nothing. They're never going to amount to anything. Well, they've already taken 15% market share in retail today. 15%. So it's one of the things where these companies really are having an impact. And so I think retailers have to do a better job of understanding what are they faced with today, but what are they going to be faced with by 2030? That to me is where I think they're making a mistake.
Welcome back to the podcast, Brittain. It's good to have you here. There's been some recent news from Amazon that they've added Lucky Supermarkets as a storefront, following up on doing so with Cardenas Markets and even Rite Aid. So I guess my question is this: why are they doing that? I think I have some ideas behind it, but my bigger question is, who's in the lead right now? Is it Amazon? Is it Walmart? Is it changing? Are we even focusing on, you made mention of Shein and Temu, like where should we be looking for leadership in this retail space right now? And what signs are giving you the thoughts behind what you'll share?
I certainly have to say Walmart's doing a fabulous job. I think they've really stepped up. They've made some wise moves. They've made some intelligent investments over the years. And when it comes to groceries, for example, we know they're leading because they have the most market share. They control 25%. They generate about 60%. Actually, it's about 58.8% of their revenue from selling groceries. So I think Walmart's done a great job there. I think Walmart is doing a pretty good job with their overall apparel assortment and other aspects of their retail business. Amazon's really in an interesting position. Number one, they're in a lawsuit with the FTC. So that's something that's going to cause them some problems, because pretty much Amazon has had to step back and they've had to become much more quiet. And they're not able to make big moves like I'm sure they would like to. So they have to be on their best behavior while they're going through this issue with the FTC. Amazon certainly making changes internally. They just put a new individual in charge of AWS. The thing where I see Amazon still struggling with, though, is their groceries. They acquired Whole Foods in June of 2017, but they really haven't done a whole lot with it. And Amazon still doesn't have a physical grocery net or a physical grocery model that they're going to be able to scale. Everyone who reads my posts, everyone who listens to me on podcasts, they know what I talk to Amazon about is creating what I call Whole Foods Plus, which is nothing more than get the best of organics out of Whole Foods, plus get the branded CPG products, your Coke, your Pepsi, your Cheetos, and so forth. I've made the argument to Amazon, you own Whole Foods. Why are you not taking 20 to 30% of the assortment out of Whole Foods and put branded CPG products on their shelves? 70% of Whole Foods customers leave Whole Foods to go shopping at Walmart or another retailer because they can't buy the branded products they want at Whole Foods. And I really think Andy Jassy needs to step back and say, wait a minute, time out. Who's really in charge here? And this goes to what I said about courage and leadership earlier. I think Andy Jassy can separate himself from Jeff Bezos by Andy Jassy saying to the CEO of Whole Foods, we actually are the ones who own you. We are the ones who are now going to be having a major input on the strategy. And I think what Amazon should do is take someone like Tony Hoggett or Claire Peters and say, you are now the co-CEO of Whole Foods. And what you're going to do is transition this company so we don't have 70% of the customers leave that store to go shopping at a competitor. I think overall it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in business. And the fact that they don't stop it really makes me question their commitment to groceries overall. In terms of Temu and Shein, yeah, I think they're an interesting group of companies, and I do believe that all retailers should step back and say, so what is it they're really doing? But what's their end game? That's the thing that I don't think enough retailers are focused on. So what's the goal here? It's not to just come in and spend $3 billion a year on advertising like they're doing. There's an end state here. And I think the retailers really need to figure out what that's going to be. And I think they better start asking, so what is our Shein strategy? What is our Temu strategy? What things can we learn from them that maybe that we can implement ourselves? And how do we maybe have a partnership with these companies, or who do we partner with, or who do we acquire, so that allows us to have a better competitive position against these companies? We know when China makes a big move, they usually win. They usually do everything necessary to at least become a number one, number two in their category. So I don't think that these companies are going to go away anytime soon.
So then, Brittain, back to my original comment on the integration of Lucky Supermarkets as a storefront on Amazon. Is that to some degree a recognition by Amazon that Walmart is succeeding at groceries and they need to have a multi-prong approach to try and stave off the challenge that Walmart, they're not going to your point, they're not getting all the brands through Whole Foods. And so bringing on other retailers that have those mainstream brands as part of a marketplace and taking advantage of the logistics, the 2-day delivery, the same-day delivery of Walmart is a way for them to not overtake Walmart, but try to stay in the game as Walmart is just accelerating its grocery business. What are your thoughts around this?
So I've heard other people kind of say things like that. I understand exactly where you're coming from. If that's Amazon's strategy, then it's time to fire who's ever in charge of the grocery program, because it's a horrible strategy. It really is. It's complicated, it's costly, and it's not strategic in any way, shape, or form. I believe the reason why Amazon is involved with Lucky more than anything is that Lucky is piloting a in-store fulfillment model from a company called Fulfill. And it's probably the most advanced in-store automated online grocery fulfillment model in existence in terms of their technology. And I think Amazon is wanting to get as close to that as they possibly can and look at that and say, you know what, maybe what we're going to do in terms of scaling is we're going to scale stores that look exactly like Lucky's. Maybe we acquire Lucky's. Maybe we scale the brand of Lucky's throughout the West Coast. And then maybe we have Amazon Fresh and we scale it. But we build future Amazon Fresh stores so that they have this same fulfillment capability that we see at Lucky's. So I think that's probably one of the things they're thinking of, or at least I hope they are. To your point, Peter, is it possible that they could go after all these grocery retailers and say to them, hey, let us be the ones who deliver your groceries? That's possible, certainly. But there has to be a bigger value proposition. And so what I've stated in posts and articles and what I've said to executives at Amazon who've reached out to me, I said, why are you not going out to all of the independent groceries and all of the regional players and saying, we're going to give you access to AWS for a fraction of what you would normally pay? And what we're going to do is something that a lot of people know. I actually kind of created this concept, but I've written about it. It's what I call collaborative procurement. And what I basically say is that Amazon, you have an incredible opportunity. You give everyone access to AWS, but then you take all of that procurement spend, the direct spend that these grocery retailers have, and you say to them, you hold on to your money. We as Amazon are going to buy all of your groceries. We're going to use our massive purchasing power, which dwarfs any of the retailers out there. We'll buy the groceries, and then we're going to turn around and sell them to you, the grocery retailer, at a much bigger discount. You then are going to be able to lower the cost of your groceries. We'll manage the logistics involved with that, but we'll actually then partner with you on being able to better compete against who? Walmart and Kroger and Albertsons and some of the, the Ahold Delhaize, the really large grocery retailers out there. It's a really unique way if Amazon goes all out. I've written about this and I've spoken about it several times. And what I made the argument is that if Amazon partners with enough of these retailers, so for example, if Amazon said, we'll actually acquire some of the regional players, and then we're going to turn around and franchise the stores back to these companies, and it's a franchise model. So they run the stores, we control the real estate, we control the business decision. But what we're doing is we're serving customers as Amazon, but we're doing it through retailers that we purchase. And it's a way for Amazon to be taking market share in areas where, frankly, there's still an opportunity for them to do so. So the challenge for an Amazon is they're really facing a determined competitor in Walmart, who has nearly 5,000 stores, like 4,666 grocery stores in the US. Amazon has around 560, I believe, 600, something like that. So a fraction of the store. So Amazon can't get into an arms race with Walmart because it'll cost them billions and it'll take them years to catch up. So Amazon has to do something unique, something that no one expects. And I think what I just outlined is one of the things they could be doing to go after market share. Simply having a relationship with grocery retailers where Amazon delivers groceries means nothing. Amazon has to find a way to where they have some type of an ownership stake in all of these retailers they're doing business with, and that way they can then be influential in leveraging that combined grocery business to go after the Target, the Walmarts, the Krogers, and the Albertsons.
As a career brand practitioner, the likes of PepsiCo, Johnson and Johnson, and recently coming from General Mills as chief customer officer, that concept is actually a scary one, Britain. But in today's inflation challenge time, it may be an unlock for consumers hunting for bargain prices as well as discounts and for where they were 4 years ago. So I'm very intrigued by what you said. But there's another player in the room, an elephant in the room. And there's Amazon and there's Walmart, which you have clearly articulated here, and the incoming of Temu as well as Shine. I'm addicted to Temu, by the way. I just buy stuff just because it pops up. But there's another player in the room, and that's called Target. In the last 3 years, Target has had mixed success. One quarter it swings up, another quarter it swings down, another quarter it swings up. Excellent digital results, but the latest quarter was nowhere in that ballpark at all. What is going on? What should they be focused on?
Well, I think what they have to be focused on is finding a new CEO. Brian Cornell, I really like him. I think he's really a solid CEO. However, I think he put himself into a position where he listened to all the wrong people at Target. They convinced him that he should really be more of a servant leader than anything else. And for those who don't know, servant leaders basically say, I'm going to put the needs of my associates above the needs of the company. We're not going to put a focus on profit. We're going to put a focus on making our associates as successful as possible. That's a really touchy-feely thing. It's a good thing to say. So what I believe absolutely has to happen when we talk about Target is to say, so what's really the problem there? In my opinion, I think Brian Cornell has done a solid job as CEO, but I think the time has come to replace him. I think Target really needs new leadership more than just about anything else. And what they really need is courageous leadership. And what I mean is someone needs to come in and say, time out. We are a retailer. We exist for one reason, to create customers. We exist to make our customers happy. We exist to create a fabulous customer experience. I understand that many of you have personal feelings about certain social issues. That's great. That's wonderful. You take care of that on your own time. But when you are a representative of Target, you're representing us as a retailer, not as somebody who was out here leading the charge on social issues. And I think Target, for all the wrong reasons, fell into this category where they were putting themselves as being the leaders in the culture war versus being the leaders in retail. So I think Brian Cornell absolutely needs to go. Then when we take a look at Target, one of the things that's always jumped out at me is how poor of a job they've done with their grocery business. Well, I think they have never hired the right individual to run the grocery business. They've either promoted people internally without the right skills, they've hired people externally without the right skills, and now they're back to have promoted somebody internally, again, without the right skills and without the right leadership. So, a company that should have a solid, well developed grocery strategy, grocery program, really doesn't. I actually think Target is one of the worst. They're so bad that when I write about Target, I always offer them several suggestions. And number one is, I think Target should step back and say, maybe we should sell our grocery business. We sold our pharmacies to CVS. What if we simply sell our grocery business? We have this space in our stores and let's sell it. I think it would be fabulous for Amazon to acquire Target's grocery business and open up Whole Foods markets inside Target stores. Now, what's interesting is that all of the research shows, all of the data shows, is that Target customers overwhelmingly shop at Whole Foods. Whole Foods customers, although they're owned by Amazon, Whole Foods customers overwhelmingly like to shop at Target. So I've always believed Target is who should have acquired Whole Foods. And in 2013, when I first wrote my research report, and I became the first person to recommend Amazon to acquire Whole Foods, I also reached out to Target and Kroger and said, both of you should be looking at this. Neither one was interested. Even Amazon at the time wasn't interested, but Amazon did eventually make the acquisition of Whole Foods. The other thing that I think that Target should do is say, you know what, maybe we don't try and do this ourselves. What if we acquire a company called Lunds and Byerly's, which is a really well-run, high-quality grocery store, grocery company in Minneapolis. I think they do a fabulous job. But an interesting thing for Target to do is go talk to the CEO of Trader Joe's and say, we have 1,890 stores. How'd you like to have a Trader Joe in every one of them? And I think it'd be interesting for Target to have some type of a discussion like that where they open Trader Joe's inside their stores. The other thing that I think that Target ought to do is just simply say, so who can we bring in to just run our grocery department? And I think if nothing else, they should just simply terminate the team that's running the grocery business and bring in a few individuals who are really heavy hitters, who really understand the business and who are good at what they do. But the bottom line for me for Target is this. Target watched as Walmart over the last 2 years hired away executives, senior directors, and managers. And that is why Walmart looks an awful lot like Target. And what Target needs to do, frankly, is start looking an awful lot like Walmart, especially when it comes to groceries. You cannot grow Target's revenues without improving their grocery business. I don't think you're going to have Target become anywhere near as profitable as they should be, as large as they should be, if they don't make a change in terms of CEO. So at a high level, that's what I really believe should happen at Target.
I think those are intriguing propositions of either putting, handing over grocery to Whole Foods or introducing a Trader Joe's store within a store similar to what they've done with Ulta. I think, though, without addressing the concern you brought up earlier of having the mainstream brands available, that would probably not be in and of itself the solution to the issue, because obviously Trader Joe's is a primarily private label assortment, and Whole Foods doesn't have those major brands. But I think those are all intriguing. My next question to you, Brittain, is around the obsession with cutting edge technology, particularly with respect to drones. Was that just a flash in the pan? Is this about creating press releases? Is anybody doing it right? Is anyone going to do it right? Where are we in this last mile delivery through automated mechanisms?
Well, I really wish Jeff Bezos was here because I tried to interview him several times on this, even when I worked at Amazon. And the thing that I wrote is this: Jeff Bezos, in my opinion, pulled off one of the most brilliant covert operations in the history of business. He had a team of individuals put together drones, buy drones off the shelf, and he puts them in a little room and he was interviewed. And he said to the interviewer, I've got to show you something. What I'm going to show you is the future of retail. And they walk in, and the interviewer's like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And Jeff Bezos is like, only we can do something like this. But I'm convinced it was never a real program to begin with. I think Jeff Bezos did this as a way to throw off the other retailers and have them go on this wild goose chase down the path of drones. Because the brutal reality is this: when the rapid grocery delivery craze came, and you could get groceries in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it died. It died a very painful death because in the United States, nobody cared. Frankly, or in many countries around the world, nobody cared. Now you hear the people who talk about drones, and what's their argument? You could get your groceries in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You can get that can of Coke and that Snickers bar in 15 minutes. Nobody cares for something like that. There is a Walmart about 6 miles from my house, and I frequently go over and park. And what I do is I watch the drone airport that they have in their parking lot. And I count how many drones take off and land. On average, 4 drones take off in a 4-hour period in return. Only 4. There is so little desire on the part of customers to have products delivered by a drone that when I speak to the team from Wing is who runs this program for Walmart, I asked them, okay, off the record, tell me, how many of these deliveries do you make a day? And I said, are you hitting your numbers that you believe you're going to? And they said, no, we're not even close. And I said, so what's the biggest challenge? And they said, the biggest challenge is convincing Walmart that drones actually have a future. So I'm not anti-drone. What I am is I'm anti-drone fanatics who seem to think that they can keep claiming that the sky will be full of drones and it's really the future of logistics, when I know for a fact that I can take a van and have an autonomous van and fill it full of packages and go make 30, 40, 50, 100 deliveries throughout neighborhoods. And do so for a fraction of the cost and with much more efficiency than I ever would with a drone or multiple drones. So I think drones have a place, but it's a much smaller percent of business than I think people realize. I've spoken to all of the CEOs at the major drone companies, and I've asked them, all right, time to be honest, will we see drones everywhere in the sky? And they all said no. We are having hard enough time just getting business for drones today that we just don't know how big this will be, but it's not going to take over logistics. And certainly last mile delivery, I should say.
First time I've heard a clear explanation of why this is a lot of fantasy and a lot of great conversation without purposeful outcome, other than, of course, in the military where it's already serving a purpose worldwide. So, listening to Brittain Ladd, independent consultant on the CPG Guys podcast. Your posts on Starbucks have recently caught my eye. Starbucks certainly over the course of the last 10 years became a household icon, and then in the last couple of years seems to have struggled to retain to that brand identity of being unique and elite for consumers, like an experience. That seems to have gone away and it's become a coffee shop.
What's interesting? I don't drink coffee. I never have. I don't drink alcohol. I never have. So I don't go to bars. I don't go to coffee shops. However, I do like tea, green tea, and every now and then I like to go into a Starbucks. And I've noticed over the years that for a company that gets so much press and where you see a Starbucks on nearly every corner, I think they're truly one of the worst run companies I have ever encountered. And here's why. Number one, we have to take a look at demographics. What we know for a fact is that Starbucks is running out of customers who are new customers to drink their coffee. They're not generating enough new customers. So Starbucks has to find a way to increase their revenue. And so, what is the logical way to do that? Sell better food. But Starbucks doesn't have good food at all. They have horrible food. Worse, the person who was responsible for Starbucks food program recently got promoted, and I believe is their senior vice president of international. And so the thing that happens at Starbucks is you could do a terrible job and get promoted. So what I believe goes on at Starbucks is there's this culture of mediocrity. Please quote me on that. When I look at the executives who work at Starbucks and I see the programs that they've been responsible for, and I know for a fact that most have failed, I struggle to understand why in the living hell were they promoted into a bigger role. So I think that has really hurt Starbucks. The other thing that I think hurts Starbucks is that Howard Schultz handpicked multiple executives, and he picked them because he wanted servant leaders. Again, servant leaders rear their ugly heads in this environment of retail, and they don't do a very good job. So I think that Starbucks needs a better leader. They need someone to come in who's going to say, wait a minute, what are we really here to do? What we're really here to do is create a much better customer experience. That means improving the amount of time it takes to order, creating a better experience in terms of the food that's available, but also thinking big and saying, why is it that we have to have baristas do all the work? Why don't we just simply change around the configuration of our stores and we give customers an ability to make some of their own drinks? Give them a reusable cup, they bring it in, and how do you pay? You just simply have your own version and just walk out. How do you know what to charge? You have them set it down on a scale, and it's actually charged by weight. So there's some really unique things I think Starbucks can be doing. And I don't want to sound too critical. I know they've worked really hard. They've created a really interesting company, but they are a mature company. And when you're a mature company, what's most important are two things: innovation and growth. You still have to find a way to grow. You still have to be innovative. And I think that's fallen by the wayside at Starbucks. When it comes to Starbucks, that post that I wrote, what I really generated a lot of interest about is I said the person who should be running Starbucks is Mark Lowry. I think Mark Lowry, who now has a company called Wonder, absolutely would be the ideal CEO to run Starbucks. Because what Starbucks needs is an entrepreneur, someone who understands food and beverage, but someone who gets things done. And I really think what he's done with Wonder is very unique. It's a food company, it's a meal company, and I'd love to see, well, what kind of meals could he come up with? What kind of food could he come up with for Starbucks that would really give them a competitive advantage? And I was amazed at how many people reached out to me and said, you know what, when I first started reading the post, I disagreed with you. But then when you explain that someone like Mark Lowry should be the CEO, now I get it. Now I know why you're anti-servant leader and you really want someone who can get things done. And that's what has to happen at Starbucks. They need someone who can get things done and make changes, especially when it comes to efficiency and food.
Breaking news as we were recording this podcast, Starbucks announced its new CEO. It's a fellow named Howard Schultz. Isn't it about time they brought him back for the third or fourth time now, Brittain? Isn't that usually how they do it when they get frustrated by a servant leader at Starbucks?
They do. They do. And I won't be surprised if that happens. But if it does, I think it's going to be catastrophic for Starbucks. You can only have someone who was a founder of a company come back so many times to rescue you. And what we know is that Howard Schultz has a poor track record of picking CEOs who can really take Starbucks to the next level. So I really hope that doesn't happen. I really do think Starbucks though has to make some changes, and I think again it comes to what I said earlier. They need a courageous leader who can say, Howard, love you, but you're wrong, and this is what we're doing. And I'm not seeing that right now.
Yeah, I think Howard needs to learn how to retire, or the board needs to learn how to make sure he stays retired. All right, let's shift to technology. I made some reference to it earlier with drones, but let's broaden this out. What's the latest in retail technology? In a number of your posts, you talk about 345 Global. You want to talk about that company and where you see technology in general going for the retail space that's got you intrigued and paying attention to right now?
Well, one of the things I've written about over the years, and it's a topic I've always been fascinated about, is what I call virtual reality retail, which is the ability to shop from any store, but do so in a way to where you're not sitting on your couch with an ugly mask on your face, something like that, but you have the ability to simply log on through a platform, log on through a website, and gain access to the stores that you normally shop at, but be able to put yourself in the aisle of that store to where you're walking around to where you can actually pull a product off the shelf and look at it. Now, I thought something like this would take years to become a reality. And a couple of years ago, I was in Las Vegas and I was attending a conference. And I ran into this company called 345 Global. And they were putting on demos to executives from retailers, and they had everything closed off. And it really piqued my curiosity. So I snuck around the back and I was able to pull the curtain aside, and I started seeing their platform, their technology. And it honestly was the most eye opening, interesting, most creative platform I've ever seen. It truly looks like something that Google would create, or that Microsoft would create, or Activision Blizzard would create. It is really that interesting of a platform. And I went to the CEO of the company, Mark Edwards, and I said, look, I'm really curious about this. I'd love to write about it. He said, absolutely not. He goes, you can't write about this. And I said, well, can I get a better demo? And he said, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I tried. A few months later, he contacted me and he said, hey, I've been reading your post and it's really fascinating what you do. And he goes, we have a strategy session coming up, and I'm willing to let you come attend our strategy session for a few days, but you can't write about what we do. You can't write about the platform. You can only share your opinion of maybe what you would do with it or something like that. And I said, deal, I'm happy to do that. And in my opinion, the hottest software out there, I put this software almost on the same level as I would a chat GPT. I think 345 Global, what they've created is frankly earth shattering. I think it's the most disruptive software that's out there. And I think it's frankly the most valuable platform that's out there. The CEO, Mark Edwards, he won't tell me exactly who's looking at it, but I have heard from multiple companies, from the Targets, the Walmarts, the CVS's, the Metas, the Microsoft. I know that Microsoft absolutely is kicking the tires to try and acquire the company. They would love to do that. T-Mobile has mentioned about possibly acquiring 345 Global. And I think multiple companies out there should be looking at it. I think Blue Yonder should be looking at it. I think the consulting firm should be taking a look at it. But their platform, they're an integrated sales and marketing platform. That's what they officially call themselves. But what that platform can do is so much more than anything that 345 Global has frankly written about or mentioned. It's truly such a one of a kind platform that I can't wait for Mark Edwards to finally say, all right, I'm going to share what we have created. Because when he does, I honestly believe that most retailers are going to say, what in the hell are we doing? Why are we not using this? And it's going to really generate a tremendous amount of growth for 345 Global, but it's absolutely going to change how retail is done. And when I talk about virtual reality retail being a reality, I mean that, because I've seen that platform actually be able to do that. And I really think that 345 Global is going to be one of the most influential platforms out there. And in my opinion, this isn't just me saying this, but I've had people who are experts in M&A and software. When I've asked them, I said, so how valuable is a company like 345 Global? And one of the leaders in it, who's very well known, but I told them I would never mention their name. they stated to me that 345 Global should be valued the same way that AI startups that are being valued at 300 million, 500 million, even up to $1 billion should be valued because of the capabilities of that platform. I can assure everyone, if I had the money, I would be looking at saying, so how do I invest in this company? How do I acquire this company? And for those investors out there, I strongly advise you to contact Mark Edwards and have a discussion with him, just as I encourage all of the retailers out there to do that. My opinion is unbiased on this thing. I don't get paid by the company, nothing. This is just something I've seen, and I think it's just truly incredible.
I'm really intrigued that you chose to bring up 345 Global because at the time of this recording, Think Blue, which is the partnership business between me, Manish, and Parag, we are talking to Mark about being his advisors in the United States. Maybe at the time of the release of this podcast, Think Blue will actually be an official partner of 345 Global. We see eye to eye with you, Brittain. We feel it's a software way beyond what it was originally developed for, which is just category management with a plethora of possibilities that we want to connect to retail as well as to CPG brands in the first place. I have one more for you, though, Brittain, an important one, and that is Instacart. Thinking about Instacart had a meteoric rise given the pandemic and given they were the home delivery engine for a long time during the pandemic, maybe year and a half. Then you suddenly look at the numbers. In reality, only 2% of all groceries purchased today are delivered to a house. So, what is Instacart's long term prospect? Is it really home delivery as a business? Is it the ads and media business? What can somebody like Instacart do to make home delivery profitable in the first place?
Well, I'm a fan of Instacart. Now, a lot of people of Instacart don't believe me because I've written very negative posts about them and very negative articles about them. A couple of years ago, stated that Instacart was nowhere near a $39 billion company. I said at most you're between 4 to 6 billion. And they went ballistic when I said that. When they did their IPO, though, that company was only valued at $9.9 billion. So I was correct. I understand the desire on part of these companies to inflate the valuation of their companies, but I don't think Instacart should have done that because I think it kind of set a bad precedent. Instacart's unique in what they do. They're working very hard. They do these ads. They certainly are delivering groceries, but the challenge for an Instacart is relevance. And what's missing from the Instacart playbook is a logistics platform specific to the needs of groceries. And I'm amazed that Instacart, with as brilliant as some of their people are, that they haven't picked up on this. For several years, I've tried to get Instacart to either sign an agreement with a company like Adabotics, which is one of the leading micro fulfillment companies out there, or AutoStore, Cartesian Kinetics, certainly InStock.com, BrightPick, and be able to go to the grocery industry and say, you know what, we're not going to fulfill from your stores. We're actually going to open up our own facilities. We'll leverage our technology and we'll do all of the fulfillment from our facilities. And then we're going to deliver in specially designed vans with specially designed containers. And we're going to go make deliveries to homes. And these containers can sit outside. It'll keep products frozen. It'll keep products cold. And it will keep certain products hot if necessary. It's a platform. It's a logistics system specific to the needs of online grocery. One of the things I mentioned last year that got a lot of press was that I said, you know, it's interesting that Ocado, the British retailer, hasn't acquired Instacart and gone to all of Instacart's customers and said, why don't we become your preferred choice for all things grocery fulfillment? They have the customer fulfillment centers to do it. They have micro fulfillment center capability to do it, and they have all of the logistics platform to do it. What they're missing are these special containers to where they can deliver these meals, deliver the groceries to a home. And so I certainly think that Instacart needs to do that. However, when Instacart became a company, I wrote a post called The Trojan Horse. And what I made the argument is this: I believe that what Instacart should do above all things is become a grocery retailer, meaning that Instacart should sell their own groceries. They should partner with UNFI. They should partner with any number of grocery wholesalers out there, Spartan Nash, and so forth. And what happens is that Instacart would say, absolutely, come to the Instacart platform, place your groceries online. But Instacart doesn't fulfill online orders for Kroger and Albertsons and other grocery retailers. Instacart simply fulfills groceries from their own grocery warehouses, their own wholesale relationships. So then that what happens is overnight, they would become the second largest online grocery retailer in the United States, only behind Walmart. They would legitimately go from a valuation of around probably $7 billion today to about 25 to $30 billion if they were to implement that model. So I think, Instacart needs to think big. I applaud them for going public, but there's still more things that they have to do. And I think the things that I mentioned, especially creating a logistics platform for the needs of groceries specifically, partnering with some of these micro fulfillment companies or partnering with Ocado, I certainly think they should go do that. And the wild card is I look at PepsiCo, and I also believe that PepsiCo should take a look at acquiring Instacart because I think it opens up really unique possibilities for PepsiCo as well. So Instacart's got some great opportunities, but I think they're really more through partnerships and things that they can do on their own unless they become a grocery retailer.
Awesome. Let me remind our audience that you can find all of our content by simply going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com. If you think you or your company has thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, that's contact@cpgguys.com, and maybe you can join us on the podcast. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com in the navigation bar up top, because that helps Peter and me determine if we're having the right conversations and the right guests. Can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for the 32,000 plus followers on LinkedIn. You make the show and shape the show. Brittain, I know when I invited you, we would cover a lot, but we did Walmart, Target, Amazon, Shine, Temu, Instacart. I mean, we hit it out of the park, man. What do you think, Brittain?
Oh, I love it. I really enjoy speaking with both of you. I've always been a fan of the show. And I really think it's important what you do because you always are willing to confront topics that I think have a level of importance, a lot of importance. But I also like the fact you like to bring on guests who are willing to really have an alternative viewpoint on a lot of things. And I'm grateful that you had me back on because I do enjoy speaking about these topics.
If I fast forward 6 months and we go to the fall, the industry will probably morph one more time. So we'd love to have you back and see how the next 6 months shaped up. In the meanwhile, Peter, any big learnings today from Brittain?
Yeah, Sheree, a couple things. I actually like the fact that Brittain, and I think he exemplified in what he said, but you need courage to lead and you need courage to succeed. And I think he laid out quite a number of different ways, provocative ones, that could be prescriptive to some of the big players. I do believe and agree with him that Amazon's got to do something to stave off I think Walmart is running away with the grocery business. And if Amazon doesn't do something soon, they're not going to do it by opening stores. They can't do it fast enough. I think a model that leverages existing brick and mortar retailers and ties them in through massively discounted services that are frankly high margin in pursuit of gaining the market share that they need is a really interesting approach. I think Target, I don't know, a new leader, store within a store. There's a whole lot going on. Minneapolis has got its work cut out for it. We'll just say that. I agree that the drones were a deep.
Just say Minneapolis. I might know a thing or two about Minneapolis.
Yeah, just a couple of things.
It's raining in 55.
I completely agree that the whole drone thing was just a head fake. That they were thrown off. All you have to do is drive down to Rogers and see the big drone station in the middle of the neighborhood market right there near where all the CPGs are headquartered. And you don't see drones taking off, but you do see all the markings of it. I think that Howard Schultz needs to stay retired. I agree with you, Brittain. And Instacart, some interesting approaches. Ocado, yeah, I could see them doing it. PepsiCo, I want to see that conversation with the board of directors. We're buying in, who knows? It could be interesting, but good conversation. I knew if we brought on Brittain, he'd make our heads start to wake up and pay attention. He's given me some food for thought I'll be mulling over the next couple of days. Sri, great
A
conversation.
pleasure doing this with you, Peter, week over week. Brittain, thank you for joining us. That's a wrap of this episode. See you soon in another episode of, wait for it, the CPG Guys.